This is Raphael.
I'm Loryn.
We're the Pacheco siblings, and welcome to the Hypercube podcast, a talk show in which two siblings converse about anything and everything. Our guest today is Dakota Farnsworth, an actor, a voice actor specifically, and director as well. You may know him online in some spaces as Tarquin, but yeah, he is joining us today for the Hypercube podcast, and welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, certainly. This is actually a bit of a unique circumstance because you're the first guest so far on this show who we weren't acquainted with prior to getting a guest spot on here.
Yeah.
Oh.
I was going to say, this is the first time we've talked to each other, I think.
Yeah,
I know this is the first time we've met. I don't know if you and Raph have met previously.
No, I certainly have not. Yeah. So yeah, really just getting this scheduled was our first interaction. But I know we have a lot of mutual acquaintances. And I know, Brygger was talking to us about you when we were interviewing him. And it definitely made a little bit of a push to make this happen.
Oh, yeah, no. And what is it? So far, we've been getting along great. Yeah, no. So what was it? Brygger did the last episode, and then he texted me and he was like, yo, I mentioned you on this podcast. You should do it. And I was like, I should do what? And he's like, you should be a guest on it. And I was like, I mean, I didn't get an invite. And he's like, no, you should. I'll mention your name, and then we can get that working. I was like, okay. So one thing led to another, and here we are.
Yeah. So you know Brygger pretty well then too, as well. It sounds like you two have some history.
Yes. So crazy story with that. So this actually goes back into another machinima, slightly insulting. I don't know if you're familiar.
Oh yeah. Actually, I've done some voice work for them.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
As have I.
Ray's amazing. So basically what happened there was I just started out voice acting. I started, doing a bunch of auditions and stuff. And I did one for a machinima. I don't even remember the name of it, but basically Ray saw my audition and he was like, hey, you would be really, really good for this part. Would you be able to audition? And I was like, yeah, sure. And so I sent him an audition of Alex Young at the time. And, he looked at it. He said, oh, my God, you're perfect for this. He got me into a call and he was like, hey, okay, listen, there's this character named Endermite. And that's who Alex Young is. And he was like, I want you to play Alex. And I need you to know that this project has had about 3 different Alex Youngs now, and we really need someone to just take this role. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. I guess what's the deadline? And he's like, that's the thing. So 4 months ago was when we had the first person playing Endermite, and then they didn't get back to us for 2 months, and then told us that they're not doing the project. Then they got the second person. The second person took a month and then decided to drop it. Then the last person took 2 weeks and decided to drop it. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, okay, so how much time do I have? And he's like, 2 weeks. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, yeah, that's going to be 400 lines too. Do you think you can do that in 2 weeks? And I was like, I will have it in 1. And he goes, what? and so by that Friday, I had every single line to him. And I actually took multiple takes of each. And he was like, holy, how did you do 700 of this in a week? And I was like, I'm just good, baby. So
Professional.
Yeah, no. So that ended up going really well. I got the Machinima Hub Award that year for Best Actor. And once Brygger saw that, Brygger contacted me and was like, hey, there's this character named Leonardo that I'm using for a detective machinima, and I think you'd be really good for him. Would you mind talking to me a bit about him later this week? And I was like, yes, absolutely. And so we started being in talks. I got cast as Leonardo Salvatore, and then we've just been friends ever since. So that's been a really awesome gig. Crimes of a Loryn, that came out about early this year.
Yeah.
No, early,
right.
Early, yes, this year or last year. I'm losing my dates. I think this year. It was this year. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going to say, Crimes of Loryn, that for sure, for me, is the one thing I know I've heard you in, because I remember seeing your name in the credits for that. I'm sure I have heard you in other stuff just by, virtue of the same sort of circles that we walk in. But yeah, I'm sure I have heard your voice in more places, but that's the one place I know for a fact that I know your voice from. because I remember watching that. Yeah, a little while back.
I'm glad that you enjoyed it enough to remember you've heard me. Hello. Yeah, no, it definitely was the biggest project at the time that I had been a part of. It took a
Mhm.
little bit for it to come out, but what was
Yeah,
it?
it was pretty long in length.
Oh, for sure. I wasn't used to animations at the time, so I was like, oh, I'm so excited for it to come up. But come on, Ray, come on. But yeah, no, just out of excitement. But it was a really good opportunity. It opened a lot of doors for me, and it was like being a part of the Machinima Hub community. There's so many like talented writers and stuff, and being able to be a part of Crimes of Valorian, something that had so much love put into it, it
Mhm.
really kind of changed my perspective on acting, and it made me want to become more and more of an artist than I already was before. And so
That's big praise.
yeah, no, definitely. And so I started going to classes. I started getting coaching. I started doing pretty much anything I could to get as like educated on all of this as possible. So I definitely owe a lot of that to Brager.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome.
And also, like, he would tell me all the time, he was like, Dakota, like, you're really, really good, and I think you're gonna make it far. I totally have your back anytime you need me. And I was like, man, that is so cool. Like, same to you. And so I was like, bro, anytime you need a character at all, even if it's like an extra screaming, like, I will do it for you. And he was like, cool.
Oh yeah, yeah, he's a good guy. Oh man, gotta love him. So yeah, that's one thing I was kind of looking forward to getting to know you a bit here, because like I said, we weren't at all acquainted prior to scheduling this podcast appearance, and I remember looking through like your website and stuff, and I think one thing that I like to try and get to know about different artists is what their journey as a creative has been, and how they got into it and why they do what they do. And I was quite fascinated by your story because you had a bit of a unique path into acting. And I suppose isn't very typical, because you kind of started out like photography, you thought was going to be your art of choice for a while.
Mhm.
And like, yeah, can you talk a little bit about that and how you go from there to psychology to acting?
Yes, it was a pretty crazy story. It all spanned about 4 years. Pretty short amount of time for all of that to happen. It was basically like I did theater acting for a very long time. I did it for about 6 years. And I had been in Oliver Twist. I had been in Bye Bye Birdie and Cinderella. Those were all.
Was this? I was gonna say, was this when you were pretty young?
Yeah, and it was for like high school plays and stuff. But our
Okay.
school was a little different with plays than most schools were, because our school, most of its like biggest funding went towards the plays and went towards our band.
Really?
Oh,
So-
really?
That's super unique.
That's unique.
Very unique. And the reason for that was because the stage that we had been performed on by Elvis Presley back when he was still like big. And so a lot of it's basically seen as like a big historical landmark inside of the school.
Whoa.
So we try to preserve it as much as possible. So they ended up getting a director for our school who had been in the Beauty and the Beast Broadway show. And we
Holy
basically
smokes.
learned everything from her. And so her and I would work together personally all the time, and she would be like, you're really, really good. You have an awesome like grasp of this. Like, I really want to work with you as much as possible. So I was in every single play that she had. And I was trying to kind of take on like every little role that I could, like helping people like learn their lines, helping people like on the crew that were like building the sets. Like I would try to help them paint every once in a while. And so, and then of course, the acting part too. And it was just a fantastic journey. And so I did that for a while. And then while I was acting, I did photography, because I didn't think acting was a viable career path. I didn't know that voice acting even like existed. I mean, obviously I did, but like there's a point of like, you think that you have to be this big shot actor to get into it.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like, okay, well, that's not really an avenue that's like good that I can do right now, because it's just not like reliable. So I picked up photography because my dad was really into it. And the first time I took a picture, it like apparently it was like perfect rule of thirds, and like I had followed every like rule without even trying. And so one of my art teachers was like, you should really like try doing this more. So I started doing photography for the school. I started doing things for the local, like the yearbook. And it wasn't like I was hired by them. I would just like take pictures and I'd be like, hey, can you guys use this at anything? And they're like, holy crap, yeah. So did that for a little bit. I did some senior photos for some friends. That was pretty fun. I had a couple people who wanted to do family photos too. I got some awesome gigs with that. Um, and then I went to college for it. And then when I was in college, they kind of told me, hey, just so you know, this is a starving artist career and I need to show you something. And they took a big projector screen up and they showed us a photo and they were like, okay, this looks really beautiful, right? And we're like, yeah. And so he shows us another photo and they're like, he looks really beautiful, right? And we're like, yeah. Shows about three more images. And we're like, okay, only one of these images is a real photo. All of the others are made in Blender. And we're like, what? And so he was like, I challenge you to figure out which one is the real one. And so we looked for a while and none of us could get it. And he's like, that was a trick question. All of them are made in Blender. And we're like, no way. and so he was like, yeah, no, like technology is getting to a point where if you want to be a photographer, you can do it while sitting at your computer. Like you don't have to go out anymore. So if you're going to get into this, you better be like on your A game or you might need to go look for something else. And so that's where I kind of went, okay, this is not something like I would love to do this as a hobby, but like I don't know. Technology is advancing so much every day. Like it's probably just better to go to something else and then have it as like a side hustle, you know?
Mhm.
So I then met with eventually I met a guy who was from Brazil. And his name was Victor, and he was a psychologist. And we met over like playing games and stuff. Like I was like online, I was like meeting new
Yeah.
people and stuff. And he eventually came up, and he started talking to me about psychology, and I was really interested. Like I thought I had a pretty natural knack for like getting to know people and talking to people and stuff and knowing what people were
Right.
feeling, And he was like, you're pretty good at this. Like, I would love to train you. And I was like, that would be awesome. So for a while, I was being trained by him. I learned a lot of different like little tricks to help people with like panic attacks and depression and all these other things. And I thought it was really, really awesome. But unfortunately, I started to learn a little bit more about the psychology field, and I was like, a lot of people go into it. It's very competitive. And then I personally this is going to sound cheesy. I didn't really enjoy the idea of being paid to help people. It just didn't like sit right with me. As much as
Mhm.
people should get paid to be a doctor and stuff like that, it just doesn't sit right with me to do this thing to get a paycheck when it should be I do this thing to help someone. And I don't know. I just think that should be the reward out of it. I've been challenged on that idea, but it's just my personal
Mhm.
opinion.
Yeah.
So I ended up dropping out of it. Which I kept all the tricks and stuff, but I decided not to continue the career. But then I started learning about more acting, and I decided to do more college classes on that. And a friend of mine, Audrey, who I currently do voiceover with, she was like, "Hey, my aunt and uncle are really into voice acting, and you should really consider doing a job with me because I think you'd be fantastic." Because Audrey had been to all my plays, she had seen all the stuff from high school, she had seen all the stuff I did
Mhm.
in college. She was like, she had been in my corner pretty much the whole time, and so she was like, "Yeah, you should really try this out." So she got me a video game gig as like an extra,
Oh wow.
which unfortunately it didn't end up working out. But
Aw.
when I was in it, it taught me a lot of really nice tricks, and I was like, man, this is really fun. So then eventually, I would say about 3 months later, that was around when I met Ray, and that's when this whole journey started.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Wow.
all comes full circle. But yeah, no.
That's quite a journey.
So you said you were doing some theater when you were in college as well.
Yes, I did a couple of classes. I also
You weren't like majoring in theater though, were you? Or...
I was majoring in theater, yeah.
Okay, you were.
So I did one show called The Split Show, which was a like sitcom comedy that we literally had like a full sitcom like made house and like a couch that everyone sat on and was like everyone was like bantering and like there was like a laugh track and there was all this stuff. It was really fun. And I was one of the extras on that, and I was fine with it because they gave us like a bunch of crazy stuff to do as the extras. So like
Yeah.
there was like a moment where one of the characters starts busting out into like a rap, And so all of us are like dressed up as like backup dancers, and none of us know how to dance. So like we were just sitting in the back, like waving our arms and like doing all this crazy stuff. There would be times where there'd be like set changes, and so there would be little music that plays, and we'd be doing skits or whatever. And one of the skits was that we were doing the set changes, but we weren't trained to do that, so things broke, and that was like the point. So they wanted us to basically like freak out when something didn't work out. It was really fun, very improv-y.
That's like entrapment.
I know, it's one
comedy entrapment.
I know, it's amazing. It was a show that very much taught me a lot of improv. I had a really good time with a lot of the people there. The people that were a part of it were a part of Doherty, and the people that taught me in my classes were a part of Doherty, which, if you're not familiar, that's the camera acting union. And so there was a lot of people there who knew what they were doing that I got taught by, and it was really a really wonderful experience for sure. So, yeah, no, that was my college experience for you.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, no, that does sound like a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun.
That's quite an arc.
Yeah, no, we got to do a lot of like little projects too, where we could create our own scenes or whatever, and so then we had to perform those scenes in front of the class, and we were given comedy as one of the scenes, and so me and a bunch of friends went, you know what? Let's give them a show they'll never forget. So we made one of us got a Halloween costume that previous year. That was a one of those giant inflatable dinosaur costumes, and we decided to use it. Yeah. And so we decided to use that, and so we made a story, this really dumb story about a kid who goes into a museum and he sees a dinosaur statue, and the mom goes, "I've been meaning to introduce you for a long time," and he's like, "What?" "That's your father." And then the dinosaur comes to life, and like it's actually his dad or whatever, and there's this whole weird story behind it. And I remember we were on the stage and we looked out into the audience when it was over, and our teacher just went, "How do I grade this?" So it basically ended up going to a vote of who here thought it was good, and everyone was like, "Yes, this was super funny." So they were like, "Okay, I guess it passes." Like, all right.
Oh, I certainly won't forget it.
No, not at all. No, it's beautiful. It was wonderful.
Work of art, truly.
Yeah, there's those Snapchat like 1 year ago today or 2 years ago today. To this day, I still have a Snapchat video that's constantly sent to me of me in the dinosaur costume running out of the room.
Oh my goodness,
it was beautiful.
Yeah. I've come to find I really love theater people. It's because it's almost inherent.
Yeah, theater people are the best.
It's almost inherent to the medium that they're going to have a lot of crazy stories.
Oh, yeah.
It's the very nature of the thing, of being in the performance side of the production, that it's just like you're kind of involved in every crazy thing that happens, and and are kind of front and center of all of it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And it's like, it's the only... I didn't understand this when my one teacher taught me this, but it is the only natural acting experience you will ever get. It is like, it's the only time that you're gonna like feel the full energy of someone else. Like if you're in film acting, right? You'll be shooting a scene, and it could look like, oh, you're having a conversation with someone, but sometimes it's literally like two completely different shots on two completely different days.
Yeah.
So
yeah, especially if you're doing like a single camera shoot, right? And you're just doing coverage one on the other. And yeah, it could be very different. And that's true. I've always said like stage theater really is like an actor's medium, right? That is an actor centric medium. And I think all the different mediums of storytelling favor one craft over another. Not, and even if they are very collaborative, obviously there's more than just actors that work in theater, but it is very much, that is like, yeah, like you said, the most acting thing that you can do really is the theater, in the same way that I think like television kind of lends itself well to writers, and film for directors as well, in many ways. It's, but yeah, they all kind of have these, they're all kind of weighted towards certain things, but for acting, it's definitely the stage.
Oh, for sure.
It has to be live. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's where we started, right? Like with back with the Greeks, we were telling stories like in front of hundreds of people. They didn't have like the Stanislavski thing where like where everyone is like, like the real acting where like you have to feel the emotion or whatever. Because back then they were just trying to tell stories because they were bored Oh, sorry about that.
Don't worry,
But
Don't
no,
worry
everyone.
about
But yeah, no, everyone was bored as hell, and they were like, it's, they needed something to get through like 10 hours of the day because they had nothing. Well, not
Yeah.
nothing, but it was.
They were just bards.
Yeah, exactly. So it was like having that like physical experience with a physical audience. There's nothing like it because like
Yeah.
I remember some plays where someone let me have free reign, and so I took time to interact with audience members while I was performing because I was like,
Mhm.
that's a really cool experience, and that's like that helps people kind of engage a little bit more, both as an actor and as an audience member.
Yeah.
And like. And like monologues were really good for that too, because that's the whole thing of like telling someone what's going on in your head. So sometimes I would literally talk to the audience as if they were like my conscience, and
Wow.
I got a couple of compliments on that was like a really nice choice. But yeah,
Nice.
no, love theater.
Oh man.
I tell any voice actor, if you want to learn how to act, do a play. I don't care if you do
Absolutely.
15, do one, because you'll never you'll never get that experience in it behind a
Oh
mic.
yeah.
Any kind of talent, do any kind of live work. Live work is where it's at because the energy is just completely different from being on a set or from being like locked behind a camera. Because when you're there and it's going and you have to be on your game and you have to know what's going on, you know when you're messing up and you know when you're doing well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And because of the fact that, it's like you don't get takes or anything like that too, right?
Exactly.
Like the whole event is your take.
Mhm.
So yeah, you just, constantly have to be on your A game. I think like kind of talking more to your field, Loryn, it'd be like I think the difference similarly between like with stunt people versus like martial arts demonstration artists,
Yeah.
right? Like first off, people who've done demonstration make really good stunt people for that same reason, I think, because it's like it's the same thing just turned up to 11 and with all of the pressure on it from the fact that it's completely live.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, having to jump through like railings or something, and it needs to look good.
yeah, it has to. So you brought up Stanislavski a second ago. So that's actually something I wanted to ask about, talking about the sort of psychological connection in your history.
Mhm.
I was like, I was wondering about that, about how deep you go into the modern method stuff. Because obviously, like you said, they didn't have that at the start. That's all relatively recent in human history. And then obviously here in the West, we have, who was it? Strasberg, who did the American method. And I guess, well, how do you square with all that?
So that was the best thing about going to college, was that I didn't just learn how to act. I learned like the proper like teachings of it, and it was really, really nice. I definitely believe in Stanislavski's whole like method, because it like in psychology, it's very much the same as that. You have to like feel it, like if like in any. So the way I was taught was that all of our emotions are kind of like, there's a purpose behind them, and we choose to have certain emotions, even if it's subconscious. And being able to like fully feel that emotion through is how we also come to getting over it. So like if I'm going through a painful experience, I can choose to be sad that day, or I can choose to say, no, I'm gonna bottle it up and I'm gonna like move on, or I can choose to do something else with it, right? And I feel the same way with a lot of Stanislavski, is that you're taking a situation and you're finding the right emotion into it, and you're trying to allow yourself to feel that emotion through any means that you can. And a lot of times with actors such like Troy Baker did this for Last of Us. He took an emotion he had from a really long time ago when he did the first scene as Joel, and he used that to help his experience with the first scene. Do either of you play Last of Us?
I have not. Yeah.
No, I have not, but I've heard a lot of good things about Last of Us.
Yeah.
The acting is stellar. Do you care if I spoil the first mission for you, just to like get
no,
that point across?
Yeah, no worries.
So the first mission is he is with his daughter, and it's like the first instance of the zombie apocalypse, and they are running through the streets, and it's just chaos everywhere, and he's so concerned for getting his daughter out of there. And then at the very end, the very last minute before they're safe, she dies, and he has to like hold on to her, and he has to tell her, everything's gonna be all right, everything's gonna be okay. And he said that there were times in his life where he could like connect that to something, and was able to bring that emotion out, and he was able to use like he was able to choose what that moment was like for him, and
Mhm.
then bring it out in the most real way possible. And they did that scene so many times. You should look it up. Very, very good, very good
Yeah.
basis for acting. I think that was one of the most helpful guides I've ever had to acting, because they fully went through everything that they did on how they came
Yeah.
into like making it
Wow.
real. Yeah, it was a fantastic little documentary piece.
Yeah, I know there was a lot of strong performances in that. Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson,
Mhm.
especially. Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things. The main reason I haven't ever had the opportunity to play it was because it was I think it was a PlayStation exclusive, and that's why.
Yeah, I feel that. Yeah. So I kind of was just like, I'm just gonna look it up because I heard it's fantastic, and I want to know what it's like.
To be
so.
fair, it could probably be watched like a movie, and you get like a lot of the same experience if it's like on the performance end. So
Yeah.
you could just
Definitely.
yeah.
I mean, it basically is a movie at that point. Yeah. But yeah, no, but and with psychology, it's really helpful because like I- I've I've come to understand emotions so much from just like meeting people and like hearing experiences of other people, that a lot of times what I'll do is I'll go, all right, this experience is similar to someone I know. How would they react to this? And then I try to think of them as I'm going through it, because
Mhm.
like I, if you don't like if I've never gone through it, I'm never going to understand it. But if I try to think about it from a different set of lenses from someone that I know, then it definitely helps with me getting more into the scene.
Mm.
And once you get better and better at it, you just click into it pretty much.
Yeah. Guess that's all just empathy, really,
For
is what
sure.
you kind of defined
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I guess here's
That
the question, though. This is a question I often have to ask actors when we get on this tangent: is do you have a preference between like the Stanislavski or the Strasberg methods? It
Def
sounds like you talked a lot about Stanislavski. So,
I definitely would say I'm definitely more in line with Stanislavski. Like having the objective, and the objective being what drives you throughout a scene, and like is what influences your emotions and stuff. I think that's all wonderful. And yeah, that's definitely what I take into just about everything I do.
yeah. And that's kind of the cool part about, I guess, art in general, though, too, is that I guess everybody has different preferences for methodologies, but both
Mhm.
can produce pretty good results. I think we've seen,
Mhm.
it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like there are strong actors who will swear by one or the other.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no. And it's like, yeah, it's I mean, it's all valid, it's all definitely
Mhm.
valid. Every actor has a different way of making it work. They just kind of
Mhm.
have to, you know, they just have to kind of make it into their own a little bit too. And I think
Yeah.
that's the struggle, is that you can hear the lessons, but once you until you actually like do it yourself and find how it works for you,
Yeah.
is what's going to determine if you do well or not. And yeah, no, I definitely think that just takes time, and it takes like being able to it takes the experience of it. So once you
Mhm.
do a bunch of projects and you play a bunch of characters and you start applying those lessons, that's when it's going to start sticking. You're going to realize what works for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's the
I
practice element.
Yeah, I find that it mostly just comes down to having some kind of intention. Because once it comes to acting or portraying emotions at all, if you're
Hmm.
going into it without any kind of intention, or just kind of like, for the most part, if you're winging it without knowing what you're doing, it's gonna be a lot more difficult to come off as genuine. But those
Yeah.
methods
Hmm.
really help. It helps to like root you in some kind of reference, and it gives like a baseline for an actor to try to come up with their own way to get to that point. Because it's gonna be, even people who swear by the same method are gonna act different. They're not all like this cut from the same mold. So it's just
Hmm.
really like a template to get to that point for every single person. But
Yeah.
it just comes down to getting,
Yeah. It's a system.
yeah, it just comes down to having intention, like, at all. It's just a method of getting there.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. And that's where like it's so important with auditions and stuff, is to like come up with your own thing. I know a lot of friends of mine who like they'll listen, so they'll be on casting call club and they'll listen to other auditions before they do their own, and I'm like, no, figure it out, like figure it out
Yeah,
yourself.
Mhm.
I would say do your own thing, and then maybe look at other people's ideas and
yeah,
think to yourself, how can I maybe make a second take of like, oh, what if I did something like this, but what if I apply this other person's idea, maybe meshed into one, and like maybe that, and then that becomes my own thing, like it's, yeah, I definitely think the creativity aspect behind acting is a really important part. And if you don't have that, then once you get the job, you're not going to know what to do because you can't copy off of anyone at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's part of, I guess, defining what I like to call like the work of acting, right? Because I think in different art forms, you'll have the element that people of that trade who really know what they're doing consider the work. And with acting, it could be a little ephemeral for some people, especially for people who don't have acting experience or don't have a lot of it.
Yeah.
It's because I can't tell you how many times, and it's kind of frustrating almost, you hear people talk about like acting, especially voice acting. You hear it often degraded as being like a really easy job. You know, like it's like, oh, you're just
anybody can do it. You're just reading lines.
Yeah, you're just reading words. You know, you ever hear that? It's like, and it's really
anybody can do that. I can read.
Yeah, and it's really frustrating because it's
so bad.
Yeah, it's the worst.
Obviously, that's an experience that you only need one experience in front of a microphone to know how wrong you are in that regard, right? Like that's pure ignorance. But it's the fact of the matter is, like, I think with actors in general, there is a larger, I guess, misunderstanding of what it is that actors do and what the work of acting is, right? Like where the actual work comes in. Because it's like, yeah, that is true. Like at a certain level, well, first off, even line reading, you know, or even sight reading, like isn't always an intuitive skill for everybody. It's
really hard.
Yeah, it sounds like it might be, but until you are forced to do it under pressure, you really don't know how good you are at sight reading.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
But like the work I've come to find with actors, and you know, whenever I talk to actors, the more I come to realize that the work of what an actor does and the reason they get paid and the reason the thing that they put in effort for is this element of, I think what it ultimately boils down to, and I think this is kind of what you were saying, is decisions, right? Actors, the work of acting is making decisions. And that is really what the bulk of it is like you get into character and it's just like, it's not just like finding the character is making decisions, right? Like, and how you tackle each scene is making decisions. That's ultimately where the work comes in, is in what decisions you make to form this character.
Yeah, no, and that's, I couldn't have said it better myself. Absolutely. Yeah, because I mean, intention's everything. And there's like, and you were talking about people who just, they're like, oh, I can read the line and I just do it. There's also the idea of, there was impressionists,
right?
Which I run into constantly. And like, so like, to give an example, there's a game that I'm currently directing. And I was looking for someone that could do an actual impression, and they were doing. I wanted someone to do like a J. Jonah, like a Jameson style voice,
like J.K. Simmons. There you go. Let's go like a J.K. Simmons style J. Jonah Jameson.
Right, exactly. So I sent out a big email to a bunch of people, and I was like, all right, hey, do you think you can do this? And I gotta tell you, the amount of get me more pictures of Spider-Man I heard, I was like, this is not what I'm looking for. Because the biggest thing is like, you can like do the impression, right? But like, if you don't have like a character behind it, right? Or like, if you're just like copying off of what another actor does, that does nothing for me. Like I'm not able to really base that off of anything. And like, but if you give me like a monologue in that voice and I can hear that you do indeed sound like this person and it like works, that's like, that helps me. And so I did end up getting someone that could do one of the voices, not that specific one, but there were two specific ones where I needed impressions, and for the other audition, someone was like, oh yes, I'm going to send you this big monologue and like show you I can do all these emotional ranges. And I'm like, yes, that is exactly what I need. Like that right there. Yep. And like, there's definitely a lot of people who like, I'll meet them and they go, oh, you're an actor? How many voices can you do? And I'm like, I mean, I can do mine. I guess I can do
right. Yeah. It's like,
and they're like, oh, well, watch me as I do these voices. And they just start doing like impressions in front of me. And I'm like, okay, like you can show me impressions, but like show me how to act too. Like,
it's a completely different skill.
Absolutely. And if you tell people to do, by the way, if you tell people to do like a New York accent, and I honestly test this if you want. If you ever an audition where you're telling someone to do a New York accent and you say, oh, hey, do an improv line at the end, I guarantee you someone's going to go, hey, I'm walking.
Right.
Somebody will do it. Somebody will do it. Yeah.
Guaranteed.
So I think a lot of people forget the acting and voice
Yeah.
acting. Like, it's not just a voice. Like, you have to, like Loryn was saying, you have to have intention. There has to be like some kind of drive behind it, or else like it just doesn't show much.
Yeah, especially like when it comes to voice acting, Raph and I have this term that we like to call where you can tell what like when a voice is lived in, like when somebody really knows that voice inside and out, and they can go through the emotional ranges and not lose it. Because I don't remember, there was this actor or actress, like they had taken over, like for some big like cartoon, they had taken over someone else's job, right? Like the character had come before, they had, all right, okay, I can do an impression of that voice, but now I got hired to do it, and I got to figure out how to cry in that voice, right? It's like, this is a completely different step from like being a fan of the show, than, you know, understanding and doing an impression of the voice, and now I have to act in it, and I have to go through all the range of emotions without losing that voice. It's a completely different monster. Like, just being able to copy a voice, like that's a party trick. That's not acting, right? Being able to do something someone else can do, it's like a handstand. Sure, you, like, that doesn't make you athletic. You can do a handstand, but if you can copy the voice, it doesn't make you an actor.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
Yeah. This is kind of part of a larger conversation that Loryn and I have had a lot of times of, again, with as part of people's general misunderstanding of acting. And a lot of people look specifically at voice acting, and again, not realizing what the work of an actor is, and just kind of look at it. And unfortunately, I think because of this presupposition, I think a lot of people get into voice acting with this mindset, and it's not very helpful for them. This idea that the line reading is the work, right? Like that voice acting is like line reading is basically the only skill that is important. It is an important skill too, don't get me wrong, but it's like that's not the nitty gritty work that you need to be good at to be sustainable in that field.
And like you were saying, that's just pure ignorance, because it's like, that's only because the only thing that like the lay person would see of any production is the finished product. So what they can see of an actor is the moment they step on set. They don't see the weeks, the months, everything that comes before that, where they're working through character decisions and trying to figure out where that character comes from, and that character's, you know, hate to be the stereotype, like trying to figure out their motivation, right? It's like they don't see all of that work that leads up to the moment they step on set, do the lines for a couple of minutes, and then step off set again. It's like, that's the only thing they see. They don't see everything that comes before it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's like, that's the difficult part too, is like, getting people to understand that too, is that if people aren't educated in it, they're never going to know, you know, like, so when I started doing voice acting, I actually took a little while of like teaching myself before fully doing it. And, there was a lot of people who did not know a lot of the tricks of like objective and stuff like that. And so when I told them that, they went, I don't know how I was possibly supposed to know about this. And I'm like, yeah, well, I mean, if you just jump into it, there's no way to know, you know? And like, yeah, it's trying to find good wording for this. I'm sure you get the idea though.
Yeah, for sure. Get a mentor, find some training, and just like know the vocabulary of the craft, because that's really what it comes down to. Is like, there's a lot of people who are winging it and probably doing an okay job of like doing it intuitively, but they don't understand the vocabulary. They don't understand the actual like terms that what they're trying to do. Because as soon as they know the name for what they're trying to do, it immediately opens up like, okay, now I can research this and figure out why some things work and some things don't when you do it intuitively, and sometimes it hits and sometimes it doesn't. As soon as you know the name of it, it's like, as soon as you know, it's like there's a whole like, you know, craft, academia behind it, then you can start to, you know, get deeper and hone that skill.
Yeah, and that being said, I was going to say that's kind of part of the whole concept of, you know, we talk a lot about narrative literacy, right? And I think just being literate in a craft is very important, which isn't necessarily to say that you have to be very academic about it. I think, you know, because that kind of gates it, I think, in some ways. But you do, just having, like you said, knowing those terms does help you a lot to be able to communicate your intention, especially when you're working with other people. And so, and that's incredibly important. And that'll bring you like even a step beyond just having that vocabulary available to be able to communicate better. And
absolutely,
like, you can't really get to your next level until you can do that.
It definitely makes for a lot of roadblocks. Definitely. Like if you're having trouble getting like a certain emotion out, you would just, if you didn't have the information, you would just think, oh, I just can't do that or something like that. You know what I mean? Like there's room for a lot of people to get stuck if you don't educate yourself.
Yeah, because like when it comes down to learning it, sometimes it's just as simple as like knowing another actor. Like if somebody was friends with you and you just talked about the method, and they had no idea what that was before, right? It's like they now have a secondhand account of what it would be like to be in the class for acting. Like they get a little bit of it, and that's enough to get them beyond, because they wouldn't have they never would have gotten that otherwise, if they never seeked it out otherwise. And having a mentor of some kind, or taking some classes, but like just knowing somebody who can speak the language is going to do wonders for somebody who's trying to get out of like a rut that they've been in acting, because there's just so much that you won't be able to get into just intuitively, unless you really know the psychology of like faking emotion, then, which is basically all acting is, right? It's like, unless you come at it from a completely different angle, like you have acting and then you have like sociopaths. It's like, oh yeah, I can fake it. I can fake this emotion for sure. I do it all the time. It's like,
That's yeah. At that point, you're basically just like, reinventing the wheel, though. You got to kind of build it from the ground up, when that information would be a lot faster otherwise. But I suppose that's ultimately what training and education would do for you, is kind of a shortcut to figuring out things that could eventually be figured out intuitively, for sure.
Yeah, and that goes for like mediums too. And it's there's a couple there's a lot of people I've met where like they'll be doing an audition for like for an animation, or they'll be doing an audition for like an audiobook or something like that. And I'll be like, "Oh, like that was an interesting way to read that. Why'd you read it like that?" And they're like, "Oh, well, I just thought it fit the character." And I'm like, yeah, but I mean, it doesn't quite sound like something you would hear in like an audiobook or like a video game or something. Like, why'd you choose that?" And they go, "Oh, I've never read an audiobook before." Or like, "Oh, I've never played a game before." And I'm like, well, you got to know what it sounds like, like what is it? That was a big thing. I talked to was it Tony Oliver recently? I don't know if you know who Tony Oliver is.
Don't think so.
You guys know the TV
Sounds
show?
familiar.
Lupin.
Okay, Lupin. Yeah, I've heard of Lupin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did a class with him recently, and one of the biggest things he was saying was like, well, not one of the biggest, but it was there. It was like, don't go for a field you don't know. Like, and if you want to know it, get educated. Like, if you want to get an anime, go watch anime, because like you're not gonna know, like characters will randomly go or
Yeah.
or like stuff like that, and you won't know how ADR works and stuff like that. So you can't. It's a little harder just to say, oh, I'm gonna just do this rather than getting educated. And then for like audiobooks and stuff, like for me, I recently got into an audiobook, and I gotta tell you, voicing every single male character and having to have a completely different voice for each one is extremely difficult.
That's like half of what GMing is.
Yeah, basically.
Oh yeah, exactly. And that what is it? Doing D&D definitely helped with that. Where I was like, oh, okay, like not every voice needs to be this like Oscar level thing,
Yeah.
like especially if it's a character that you're only going to see for like 2 seconds.
Just has to be good enough.
Yeah. And so I would listen to other audiobooks too while I was at work or something, and I'd be like, okay, so this is how they read this is how I read that, or whatever. And I would get a little bit more educated on it, because I wasn't as educated as I thought I was. And that's pretty important too, is that if you come into a roadblock, maybe you should step back and look at the medium a little bit more, because maybe something that's there you just never thought of.
Yeah.
That would help.
Oh,
you,
yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's good work.
Yeah, definitely. I owe him a lot for that info, because I was like, I never really thought of that. Yeah, like, I mean, it makes sense to learn the medium, but like, it's a little different when there's like details that you wouldn't think of. Like you could say, oh, I've heard a narration before, so I can do narration. But then there's all these little tricks with it where like, oh, when you have a comma or something, sometimes books require longer pauses and some require shorter pauses, and you have to know what kind of book you're reading in order to know that. And it's like, okay, like that definitely helps.
Wow.
Helps. But,
Yeah. So I gotta ask, you play a lot of D&D?
Yeah, I was about to ask.
Yes, 100%.
Okay. No wonder.
Yeah.
No wonder we're getting along so swell.
Noted.
Absolutely. Yeah. What is it? What you'll learn about most voice actors is that we all play D&D, like every single one of us. It's the only hobby. What'd you say?
Thanks, Critical Role. Now all voice actors play D&D.
Well, it makes total sense, and I definitely would
does.
say that Critical Role was one of the biggest parts of that, because it's the only voice acting practice we can have that's also just super fun.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, not the only, but it's definitely like the best choice. It's definitely like a setting where you feel comfortable around your friends. You can like experiment with new things, and if you're playing a specific character, you're gonna have that voice for a while, so you can really adapt it and make it your own.
Figure out how to get it lived in.
Really, like the D&D is just like mini theater.
Yeah, well, that's
basically
what,
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Liam O'Brien, one of the cast members of Critical Role, and just legendary voice actor generally, and voice director.
Yeah.
But he often has said that, is that like, because as his career kind of went on, he, you know, when his like theater was his first love, but then as his career kind of went on, it became apparent that he was going to be making his living doing voice work, either behind the mic or directing. And he still kind of missed theater. And that's what really got him kind of hooked when he met Matt Mercer and started getting back into D&D, was the fact that he was like, this literally scratches all of the itches of theater, you know, and how much and everything he missed about that without actually, you know, being able to having to reroute his career entirely, you know. It still gives you the same theater high.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. There's a lot of people I've worked with in the past that I would love to work on a project again with, but I mean, like, the amount of people auditioning for each project is so crazy. So like starting up a D&D campaign, it does definitely feel like I'm working with them again.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, shoot, you probably, if you take one look at our channel, you probably noticed that we do a lot of tabletop RPG stuff. So
I did see the Resident Evil.
Yeah, we just wrapped up after 5 years the Resident Evil campaign. Which was, really crazy.
Oh, God,
and
I feel that, the 5-year thing. Oh, God, I feel that.
Yeah, I'm still reeling from it emotionally because I didn't expect all of us to be in tears by the end of that show. But, whew, yeah, that was we just recorded that last Saturday, and that was recorded and streamed it. Yeah, that was harrowing. But, yeah, like even me, I wouldn't really consider acting. I mean, I've done acting, but I wouldn't really consider it, you know, a craft that
as a career.
I'm particularly passionate about, but I love people who are. But I'd much rather be directing, and you know, and on that side of the camera than on the other. However, that I could definitely feel, again, that same like sort of theater high, that performance element of doing tabletop RPGs. And I could definitely, it's one of those things that really makes me feel, this is what actors love about their medium, you know?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I agree with you on the directing side. I was telling you before I recently started doing it. And like, it is definitely, it's very fun. I enjoy it. And I think that like, I might enjoy it a little bit more than acting if I'm being entirely honest with you. Because I like, a lot of it's like, I take a lot of the stuff I learned from psychology and like being able to do therapy for people, and I can and like acting and all these other things that I've gotten involved with in my life, and it's all kind of in one umbrella, under one umbrella. And it's like, you know, if I'm like voice directing an actor and they're having confidence issues, I know how to help them with that. You know, I know how to get them to not be so self-conscious, and I know how to like get them to feel the emotions they need to feel for a scene. And it's really, really cool. I have a really good time with it because it feels like everything that I've worked for in my life all kind of like fits.
That's
now.
true.
Like it all makes sense, and it all like it's like every experience. Yeah, I keep reiterating the same thing. Basically, it's the thing where I feel like I was meant to do it, basically, and I want to do it a lot more.
Yeah, the theater experience, and you understand the acting side of it, so you know what it's like to be on that side of the mic. But you also have the experience of easing somebody through emotions and teasing a performance out of them, and getting that side of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like a lot of actors too, they look at a director and they go, this person's my boss. They're above me. And like, you know, like, and they get very nervous and stuff. And I think it's important to know also that, you know, we're people too, you know, like we're, you know, we're chill. Like we decided to go into a career where we make cool stuff with everybody. Like, you know,
unless you're like some jaded industry professional, you know, like generally speaking, you should be pretty chill as a voice director.
Get in the booth. All right, let's get over with.
Right, exactly. And I think it's a nice way to be able to help people, like, you know, relax a little bit, you know, like not be like intimidated by everyone.
I've honestly found, that ends up being a lot of my work as a director is cultivating an atmosphere where people can feel relaxed. And sometimes it comes easier than others. I think it helps a lot when, because I've mostly directed for voiceover, and and remotely at that. So I think it helps a lot when you have multiple people in the call, especially if you have multiple cast members who are recording at the same time. I find that's always easier to get people relaxed than otherwise. But still, like, it's something that's I've found is a lot of the work you have to do. And again, it'll be different for everybody, how naturally that'll come, for every actor. But yeah, because there are definitely some people, that you could tell come with that kind of trepidation, especially with that power dynamic. And so much of the work for me just ends up being like, okay, how do I cultivate an atmosphere that is friendly and that can get them relaxed? Because when people are relaxed, then they can focus on their performance better.
Exactly. And then and then confidence too, like really boosting their like, oh yes, I can do this. Like I am totally like, this is for me. I got this. And a lot of the stuff too is like realizing some of these people, it's like, this is their first job. Like they might never have even been in a live direction setting before. They thought it was just going to be, oh, they record lines and set it into the director, and they don't have to like meet people or whatever. Because that is a pretty big perception in voice acting, is people join it because they're like, oh, I don't have to be in front of anyone. I don't have to talk to anyone. I just have to scream into a mic. But nope, that's not how that works. So yeah, definitely helping people get out of their insecurities is really, really nice as a director. And I definitely want to start getting into more projects and a lot of bigger stuff because I'm loving it so far.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely feel you there. So I guess we were going to have to be winding this down here soon. Yeah. We're coming to the end of our time. But a couple last things I really wanted to hit at, just so we could kind of wind this down. I do want to know, what do you have that you're working on currently or upcoming that you're really excited about? Is there anything you want to highlight?
Oh, God, so much. I would definitely say the biggest one right now is Project Eden's Garden, and that is a video game. What is it? Is directed by Taco and Juve. Juve is one of the former producers of Godfall, which was a Gearbox game. That one we're working on now. We just released a devlog saying that our prologue chapter will be released in December, and it's going to be like an episodic thing. So I'm very much looking forward to that. Everyone in the cast is wonderful. What is it? We all have really, really good chemistry with each other. It's been a blast.
Are you on the acting side or directing on that one?
I'm on the acting side. I've been asking. I've been like, hey, like I'd love to like shadow you or something, like get some tips and stuff. But I don't know. It's a pretty big project, so I don't think that'll happen. But I mean, that's
but you got to shoot your shot.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. That's the biggest thing. I was like, well, I would rather get a no than not try. So, and that goes with all acting, is like, definitely you're going to have more no's than yeses, but you might as well see if it is a yes,
You'd rather get a no than not know.
Exactly. Correct. What is it? I'm working on an audiobook called Warborn. I can't really talk too much about it. I can say the name, but that's about it.
Well, that sounds epic, though.
It's super good. I gotta say, it is like reading every chapter has been an absolute roller coaster.
That must be like a good gig, is if you love reading. Is just like like you get to experience a book and do work at the same time.
Yeah, and the director will call us, and we'll call him, and we'll all like be screaming and call us like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it happened!" And like, and what is it? And the director will get super excited, and he'll go around and he'll ask people for like tips and stuff. And one of the best things too is like he has a bunch of people who like are reading the book as like beta readers, I guess. And everyone's telling us that, like, it was me and Audrey, actually, Audrey, the girl I was telling you that helped me get into all this. She's actually working with me on the audiobook. I'm doing all the male voices. She's doing all the female voices.
That's a big task.
It is super big, but it's wonderful. I love it. What is it? We like to go over the book all the time and talk about like, oh, this is happening a lot. This is happening a lot. And we've gotten a lot of good compliments about like how both of us sound like we are not it sounds like there's more than two actors, basically, is what they tell us. Like when we tell people, oh, we're the only two on this project, they go, what the hell? So that makes me feel really good.
Yeah, that's like the highest compliment you could receive as far as the versatility goes.
I know, right? It tells me I have an awesome range, so does Audrey, and we're like, yep, We're cool with this. We're
Yeah,
cool with
I mean,
this.
that must be awesome.
And I'm sure you guys have awesome chemistry.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, I'm sure it helps working with someone that you've known so long.
Oh yeah, no, Audrey's definitely one of my besties. Audrey's been such a doll. Yeah, I can't thank her enough for everything that she's done, just getting me into all of this to begin with. But yeah, no, there's that. We got Virus 01. That's a animation that'll be coming out. Not sure when. We don't have an exact release date of that. I have a Sly Cooper Rise of the Legendary Thief. And I will be playing Sly Cooper in a animated series. It will be a fan animation, but we have a lot of production going into it and a lot of big names playing each character. So I'm pretty excited about that. You can look it up on Twitter. I will be playing a NPC character in the Horizon Bound video game. And then I will also be a part of an audio drama called Void, which I cannot talk too much about.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Audio drama.
That's exciting.
And then for directing work, I only have two things. I have Exospace, which is a video game. Originally, it was created in 2017. We're making a reboot for it. We're hoping that that'll come out sometime this year before December. And that'll be getting a release on Steam. And then another one is a visual novel video series called Murder Channel, which just recently we just started getting into production. So,
wow. So you got a lot on your plate.
Busy.
I do have a lot on my plate, yes.
Wow, that's awesome, though. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, you've already plugged a bunch of things, but I guess whatever else, where can people find you generally? What are your hubs?
So you can go to my website at dakotafarnsworthvo.com, or you can go to my Twitter, which is at Tarquin_Irusa, which is TARQUIN_IRUSA. Or you can just search me up on Twitter as Dakota Farnsworth. I should pop right up.
We'll have all this linked in the show notes as well.
Yep, perfect. And yeah, other than that, you can find me on my casting call club under Tarquin also. And then, yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. Alrighty. Well, Dakota, it was a pleasure meeting you and getting to have a great big conversation and get to know you a lot better. Hopefully we could
absolutely
work together sometime in the future.
Oh, please. Yes, 100%. Fill my DMs.
Slide right on in.
It's been an absolute pleasure meeting both of you too. I really appreciate this opportunity. This is really fun. I'm glad that Brager was like, yes, please do this.
He knew what he was doing.
Absolutely did.
Well, yeah. Again, been a massive pleasure and hope we get to work with you at some point. So, this has been the Hypercube podcast. Our guest today was Dakota Farnsworth. The show is edited by Loryn Pacheco, mixed by Raphael Pacheco, with original theme music by Mono Memory. Till next time, we'll see y'all later. God bless.
Good night.
Good night.